Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that's super important. Why you can't just read the headline and call it a day. We get bombarded with these huge numbers, right? Record profits, massive growth. But the real story, the one that actually tells you what's going on, that's usually buried one level deeper.
So let me set the scene for you. A huge company absolutely smashes its earnings, blows all the expectations out of the water. You'd think their stock would just skyrocket, right? Well, what if I told you it went on a wild roller coaster instead? That's exactly what happened with PDD Holdings, and we're going to figure out why. Let's get into it.
All right, so first up, we're talking about PDD. Now, you might know them as the giant parent company of Temu and Pinduoduo. So they just dropped their Q2 earnings reports, and the way the market reacted, well, it was just plain weird. Super confusing.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It's a total roller coaster. Before the market even opens, the stock explodes. It's up 12%. And that's all based on that one big, shiny revenue number. But then, the opening bell rings, investors start, actually reading the report, and all that excitement just evaporates. By the end of the day, it's sitting on a tiny little gain. So, what on earth was in the fine print? Okay, to figure this puzzle out, we've got to do exactly what those investors did. We have to look past that big headline number. This all comes down to a classic dilemma that pretty much every company deals with. This constant tug of war between growing like crazy and actually making a sustainable profit. So this is the number that got everyone so fired up at first. Almost 104 billion yuan in revenue. That crushed what the experts were predicting. And, on the surface, that looks amazing. It screams that people are flocking to their websites. It looks like a total home run. But, and this is a huge but, here's the plot twist. While all that money was coming in the front door, the company's operating profit, that's basically what's left after you pay all the bills to keep the lights on. It tanked. It dropped by 21%. And that is the number that made investors hit the brakes. I mean, think about it. How can you be making more money than ever, but somehow be less profitable? It doesn't quite add up.
And when you put it all side by side like this, you can really see the headache investors were dealing with. You've got total revenue up a solid 7%. Great. But then you look just a little bit closer, operating profit down a shocking 21%. Net income is down too. This is that aha moment, or maybe an oh no moment, where everyone realized the story was way, way more complicated than just one good number. So what exactly was going on here? Well, for one, the cost of making all that money, shipping, servers, all that stuff, it shot up by 36%. PDD is also spending a ton of cash to support their sellers and to battle it out with huge rivals like Alibaba and JD.com. But here's the real kicker. PDD's own executives basically told everyone, hey, don't get used to these profits. That kind of cautious warning from the top, that's a massive red flag for Wall Street.
Okay, so that explains the how the profits dropped. But to really get the why is PDD spending so aggressively and sounding so nervous about the future? We need to pull the camera back. We have to zoom out, because a massive global company like PDD doesn't just exist in its own little bubble. Its success is totally linked to what's happening in the world's biggest economies. And that brings us to part 2 of our story, the U.S. economy, which has been surprisingly strong. Right around the time PDD was releasing its numbers, the U.S. put out some updated economic data of its own. And yeah, there was a pretty interesting twist in there too. So, the first look at the U.S. economy's Q2 performance showed it was growing at a healthy 3%. Pretty good, right? But when they went back and finalized the numbers, it was actually even better, 3.3%. That tells us that the biggest economy in the world was humming along even stronger than anyone first realized. And get this, there was even more good news. Inflation, which has been a huge worry, looked like it was finally under control. A really important inflation number, the PCE, hit the Federal Reserve's target of 2% right on the nose. So think about that. The economy's growing faster than expected, and prices aren't spiraling out of control. That's pretty much the dream scenario. So where did all this economic firepower come from? It was really 3 things. First, businesses were investing like crazy, especially in AI. That was up almost 13%. Second, regular people, American consumers, just didn't stop spending. But the third one, this one's a little tricky. Imports dropped sharply because of tariffs. Now, technically, that makes the GDP number look better, but a lot of economists call that a mirage because it might not last. But definitely hang on to that idea about tariffs. It's going to be important in a minute.
All right, so let's pause for a second. We have these two separate stories running. On one side, we have PDD's confusing earnings report. On the other, we have a US economy that's looking really tough. Now it's time to bring them together. Let's connect the dots and see how this big picture economic stuff can have a huge impact on a single company.
And for a company like PDD, this whole situation is like a real push and pull. Think about it. On one hand, you have strong American consumers with cash in their pockets. That is the absolute perfect audience for Temu, PDD's international app. That's a massive plus for them. But on the other hand, you have the threat of those US tariffs we just talked about. That's a huge, scary unknown. And it's a big reason why PDD's leadership sounds so cautious about the future.
And look, this stuff isn't just numbers on a screen. It has real effects on real people. Let's imagine an entrepreneur, maybe a guy named Ramesh in India, who runs a textile business. When the US economy is doing well, he suddenly sees a 15% spike in orders from American shoppers. And what does that mean? It means he can hire more people in his community. A strong US economy can literally create jobs on the other side of the world.
Or how about this? Picture Priya, who works in IT in Bengaluru. Remember that big 12.8% jump in US business spending on AI? Well, for her, that means her company is getting a ton of new projects from American clients. And for her, that can mean a promotion, a bigger salary. It's just amazing when you think about how connected everything is.
So after all that, what's the big takeaway? What's the point of connecting all these different dots? It all boils down to one simple, powerful idea. You've got to learn to read between the lines. And here it is, the crucial point. Headlines are designed to grab your attention in half a second. They're not designed to give you the whole picture. The real story, the one with all the important nuances, whether you're looking at a company's earnings or a country's economy, it's always there, waiting in the details. You just have to be willing to look for it. So this actually gives us a really practical checklist for how to think smarter. First, always look past the flashy revenue number. Check out profits and, just as important, check out the costs. Second, you gotta understand the bigger picture. What's going on with things like trade policy or tariffs? Third, pay very close attention to what the company's leaders are saying about the future. That guidance is a huge hint. And finally, number 4, think about the long game. Does this company have the cash and the strategy to not just survive, but to win in the future? So, I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. Today, we saw how AI investment in the US can lead to a promotion for someone in India, and how tariff talk can send a Chinese company's stock on a wild ride. So the next time you see one of those big, bold headlines, I want you to ask yourself, what's the hidden connection here? What's the real story that's hiding just under the surface? Thanks for tuning in.